interesting discussion this. The electric car is still an elusive dream for many consumers, thanks to high import duties and a lack of government subsidies. Now, a survey by online platform AutoTrader has found that for every 10 million cars on the road, 1,000 of them are electric vehicles. The study also found that while 70% of motorists are keen to buy an electric car, they don't see it as a real possibility because, in part, of the cost. Let's unpack the story now. We're joined by AutoTrader CEO George Mienie. George, thanks very much for your time this morning on the AM report. I'm actually surprised to know that for every 10 million cars, we do have 1,000 electric vehicles on the road.
Hi, Michelle, and thanks for having me as usual. Yes, you're absolutely right. 1,000 odd electric vehicles on our roads, and the penetration is very, very low. It's not surprising, actually.
So if we're talking about, cost being one of the things that are keeping many people who would like to go into electric vehicles out of the market, what kind of cost are we talking about?
Well, one of the biggest surprises for us was, as you pointed out, the low penetration juxtaposed against the high demand. So, and then also that less than 14% of South African consumers have actually experienced an EV. So that's kind of contextualized the study itself. But the cost implications are the biggest elephant in the room. The cheapest electric car in the market today is the Mienie SE, which is 642,000 Rand. And we found that in the study that we did, consumers are looking for an EV priced under 500,000 Rand. So, we've got to ask ourselves the question, is cost the biggest barrier? And if cost is the biggest barrier, what can we do to bring that cost down to under 500,000 Rand? Because I just don't see mass adoption or scale at the prices that they sit at the moment.
I'm sorry, George. I actually meant at the start of our interview that I was surprised by 1,000 electric vehicles for every 10 million being on the road. I thought that was quite a large number, but obviously that's not true if we look at trends around the world.
Absolutely true. It's not a large number. It's only 2%. Of the surveyed people have owned or ever owned an EV. So given the 68% of consumers, or just under 70% of consumers, actually want to drive an EV, shows me that the 1,000 is actually low penetration in relation to what consumers really want.
So in terms of the price of, let's call it, an ordinary vehicle versus an electric vehicle, what kind of jump is there in price? Let's say if a car that isn't an electric car is 500,000 Rand, what kind of jump in price would you see for the same sort of size of a vehicle in an EV would you be seeing?
Well, if we look at just averages in terms of average car prices in South Africa, from a used car point of view, the average price sits at somewhere around 250,000 Rand on average. When we look at new cars, that goes up to just over 300,000 Rand. And then you get the cheapest electric car in South Africa. The least expensive electric car in South Africa being the Mienie SE at 642,000 Rand. And then juxtapose that against the study that we did, where consumers clearly said that they will be more inclined to buy EVs if they are priced under 500,000 Rand. Now, it doesn't mean that cars over 500,000 Rand or electric cars over 500 Rand currently, which, the Mienie SE falls into that category, and the Jaguar I-Pace is over R1 million. It doesn't mean there isn't a market for those cars. It just means that scale is potentially an achievable objective if we get the car down to under 500,000 Rand. And you can see the averages in used cars and new cars, the average prices are way below 500,000 Rand currently.
The question then, if we're going to get more electric vehicles into the market, is do we have the infrastructure in South Africa? For example, if I'm going to be driving all around the country, long distance travel, will I be able to charge?
Michelle, that's a very good question because, it's a little known fact that on South Africa's major highways, there are charging stations every 100 to 200 kilometers. So I think that's the first point to make. In urban areas like Joburg, Durban, and Cape Town, or our major cities, you don't have to travel more than about 20 to 30 kilometers to find a charging station. But that's not the biggest problem. Even although South Africa has currently one charging station for every 4 electric vehicles on our road, whereas internationally that ratio is one charging station for every 20 electric vehicles. So our penetration of electric charging infrastructure is higher than anywhere else on the planet. The problem remains adoption of the electric vehicle itself, not the charging infrastructure. People with range anxiety, because range anxiety was one of the things that came out in the study. Consumers were concerned about range, and they want an electric vehicle that can travel 500 kilometers or more, which is a very high possibility. Currently, the Jaguar I-Pace almost makes it to 500 kilometers on a full charge. But the problem with charging isn't destination charging. At the moment, we as consumers, we destination fill our cars. You go to the filling station, you fill up, you drive the car from full all the way to empty. Some people drive it beyond empty, but you drive it all the way to empty, and then you go and destination fill again. In the electric cars or electric vehicles, the destination filling becomes a thing of the past. You plug it in at your home just like you would your mobile phone. And at the moment, consumers wanted, in the study, they want a car that can charge overnight in their home in under 12 hours. It's a very high possibility. If you think about the mileage that you do during the day, you don't need a full charge in order to do your runabouts during the day. So it's more about a lifestyle or behavior change, which is an education or a marketing problem that we need to solve. I like to use the horse analogy. We're going back to pre-internal combustion engines, to when we rode horses. You didn't take your horse to a feeding station. You fed your horse at home. And electric vehicles are exactly the same.
To ask the question around load shedding, we haven't had widespread blackouts for some time now, touch wood, but is that an issue for South Africans? I mean, it must be.
Well, I mean, if you look at the load shedding and the amounts of the time period that load shedding happens, it's for a couple of hours in most instances. So I think that's a big consideration. While load shedding is a big problem, and it's the only thing of its type that I know of in the world, in South Africa, it happens for a couple of hours at a time. But parking that for a second, the city of Tshwane did a study. And the study clearly showed that the electric vehicle charging load on the city of Tshwane was insignificant because of the time at which the electric car actually charges. If you change your lifestyle and use the horse analogy that I just spoke about, your car will be charging at a very low demand period. And chances are you're not charging from empty to full. You're charging maybe from 3/4 to full because you haven't used all that charge during the course of the day. So while load shedding is a factor, I'm not going to say that it's not a factor, and the country's electricity delivery needs to become a lot better. But I don't think it is a massive prohibitor for electric vehicles merely because of the lifestyle change.
Do you have an electric vehicle?
I don't, but I am definitely, you're going to see me in one in the next 18 months.
Thanks very much for your time this morning on the AM Report. George Mienie is CEO of AutoTrader electric vehicles on South Africa's roads.